Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty?
Yes.
Are you pleading guilty because you are guilty? Yes. That is the voice of Brian Kohberger, a man who stood before a judge, admitted to the brutal stabbings of 4 University of Idaho students, and accepted a life sentence. That was July 2025. Now that same voice is singing a different tune from a maximum security prison cell, filing a petition for post-conviction relief, claiming his defense attorneys coerced him, that promises were broken, and that he is actually innocent. The ink is barely dry on a Netflix documentary, and suddenly, a convicted quadruple murderer wants a trial.
So Brian Kohberger remains in prison in Idaho. He's seeking post-conviction relief, claiming exculpatory evidence wasn't disclosed to him. He calls the plea agreement a broken plea. Just like the book an author wrote.
The timing is not an accident. It is a script. Imagine a man standing in a dark room holding a single lit match. He uses the flame to study a map of his own crimes, but as the match burns down to his fingertips, he panics and tries to blow it out. The room goes dark, but the damage is done. The burn on his hand is the evidence. That matches his Amazon account.
Recently, Judge Hippler unsealed a document that outlined the timeline of Brian Kohberger's purchases. This came before Kohberger filed a petition for post-conviction relief earlier this week, saying he was coerced by his defense attorneys to plead guilty and made promises that were never kept. He claims he's actually innocent. Kohberger filed that petition just days before a documentary on Netflix was set to drop, and that series is now airing. Kohberger remains behind bars in Idaho's maximum security.
The burn is the digital footprint prosecutors unsealed just days ago. Before we go deeper into what the documents actually show, make sure you're subscribed to the VerdictOrigin. Because we don't just cover the story, we follow the evidence. Judge Hippler unsealed a court filing that lays out the financial expert testimony prosecutors were ready to unleash at trial. It reads less like a legal document and more like a premeditation manual.
Filing unsealed by Judge Hippler reveals an expert was going to testify about Brian Kohberger's spending, what he was buying, and how he was making purchases before and after the murders. Some of this information is disturbing, and some of it's just downright confusing. A major piece of evidence prosecutors would have focused on: the K-bar knife, a sheath, and a sharpener purchased off Amazon. Investigators found the sheath next to Maddie Mogan's body, but they never recovered the sharpener or the knife. Prosecutors certainly believe a K-bar knife was the murder weapon because of the sheath left at the scene.
On March 23, 2022, 7.5 months before the murders, the Brian C. Kohberger Amazon account purchased a $130 electronic gift card using a Visa card registered to his family home in Pennsylvania. The next day, March 21, that gift card was redeemed for a K-bar full-size Marine Corps fighting knife, bar sharpener, and omega-3 DHA supplements.
Shane Cox was going to testify that the customer purchased an electronic gift card for $130 using the Brian C. Kohberger account. The billing information was for Brian Kohberger at his family's home in Pennsylvania, and a Visa card for Kohberger was used to purchase the gift card. This was on March 22nd, 2022, 7.5 months before the murders. The plan, prosecutors would have argued, was already in motion, and the next day, the purchase for the knife was made. Cox was going to testify that on March 21st, 2022, the electronic gift card was used to purchase a K-bar sharpener for $23.40 through the Brian C. Kohberger account. At the same time, the customer purchased a K-bar full-size Marine Corps fighting knife for $86.15. Also purchased with the gift card, omega-3 vegan DHA supplements for $20.45 using that electronic gift card. The expert was also going to testify that
he bought a murder weapon and health supplements in the same online shopping cart. That is the absurdity of the evidence. It is mundane, it is meticulous, is damning. The purchase was not the end. Between March 22 and March 27, Amazon click activity shows the customer returned to the site every single day to check the shipping progress of that knife. Every single day. A man does not check the tracking number of a camping knife daily unless that knife is the centerpiece of a plan.
Purchased. Then, in the days after Kohberger ordered the K-bar knife, sheath, and sharpener, he was checking on the shipping progress. The prosecutors said between March 22nd and March 27th, 2022, Amazon.com click activity for the Brian C. Kohberger account shows each day that the customer was viewing pages associated with the shipping progress of the Amazon.com order for the K-bar knife and sharpener purchased on March 21st, 2022. Now, this raises a question. Was Brian Kohberger planning to carry out murders in Pennsylvania, or was he thinking ahead to his move to Washington State? We don't know. Nearly 8 months after buying the K-bar knife on November 13th, 2022, in the early morning hours, Maddie, Kaylee, Ethan, and Xana were stabbed to death in the home on King Road. The K-bar knife sheath.
This was the slow motion countdown of a clock that nobody else could hear. And this is where the first piece of a damning pattern emerges, one that echoes forward like a refrain: delete the account, delete the account, delete the account, because that is exactly what he tried to do next.
To potentially cover his tracks had he realized he left the K-bar sheath behind. Prosecutors wrote that Shane Cox would testify that 2 days after the murders, on November 15th, 2022, Amazon.com click activity showed the customer navigated to a page related to deletion of account activity. So 2 days after the murders, prosecutors were going to present testimony that Kohberger tried to delete his Amazon account, but he didn't. Prosecutors wrote, on November 23rd, 2022, and December 6th, 2022, the Amazon click activity for the Brian Kohberger account shows the customer was viewing.
November 13, 2022, the 4 students were murdered in the house on King Road. The knife was never found, but the K-bar sheath was sitting next to one victim's body. 2 days later, on November 15, Amazon click activity shows the customer navigated to a page specifically related to the deletion of account activity. This is the digital equivalent of throwing bleach on a crime scene. He knew he left the sheath behind. He realized the chain of evidence connecting that sheath to the Amazon purchase, and his first instinct was to burn the receipt. He searched for how to delete his account. He did not do it. Why? Perhaps arrogance convinced him the FBI could not extract the data. Perhaps he realized that deleting a closed account would be a bigger red flag. Either way, the question remains: what else was hiding in that account that terrified a criminal justice PhD student so profoundly that 2 days after killing 4 people, his primary concern was wiping his browser history?
Yeah, and he went back and tried to delete his Amazon account, or looked at how to delete it, 2 days after the homicides. So he knew that says to me, Joe, that he knew that he had left that sheath there, that he had screwed up. But then he decided, I guess, not to delete his account.
Right. I mean, to me, that's the equivalent of throwing bleach on the electronic crime scene, right? Anytime you try to delete your, in this case, purchases or social media accounts or anything like that, before, during, or after a crime is a big red flag. And as we've seen in this case and any other cases, they can still go and get that information, in more often than not.
Let's move on now to December. And in December, the investigation's heating up. And they say
the clock does not stop there. This is the ticking clock moment. By November 23, just over a week after the murders, and again on December 6, Kohberger's account was viewing pages for K.A.bar knives with sheaths. The investigation is heating up. Law enforcement is canvassing the community. So what does a guilty man do? Does he search for a replacement because the cops might come knocking? Or does he search for a replacement because he intends to kill again? What does it say about a man that, with the walls closing in, his search history reveals not fear of capture, but preparation for the next act?
Yeah, and he went back and tried to delete his Amazon account, or looked at how to delete it, 2 days after the homicides. So he knew that says to me, Joe, that he knew that he had left that sheath there, that he had screwed up. But then he decided, I guess, not to delete his account.
Right. I mean, to me, that's the equivalent of throwing bleach on the electronic crime scene, right? Anytime you try to delete your, in this case, purchases or social media accounts or anything like that, before, during, or after a crime is a big red flag. And as we've seen in this case and any other cases, they can still go and get that information, in more often than not.
Let's move on now to December. And in December, the investigation's heating up. And they say he's clicking again all over Amazon, looking for a K-bar knife and sheath. So, it raises the question, was he looking for that in case the cops came coming, like, oh, I'm going to go buy a replacement? Or was he getting ginned up and revved up to possibly do this again?
Well, I think both of those are things that investigators were concerned about while this was going on. To me, it's more or less that he was preparing for another event. He saw how well that weapon worked in
The financial architecture around this plan was just as damning. In July 2022, Kohberger opened a new bank account with a $2,000 deposit. He did not touch it for months. Then, starting November 10, 3 days before the homicides, he switched exclusively to cash withdrawals from that account and made only cash purchases. He knew that a digital transaction creates a timestamp. He knew that a debit card swipe leaves a breadcrumb trail for a geolocation warrant. He was a criminal justice PhD student building an analog wall around a digital attack. What he forgot, as they all do, is that ATMs have cameras. The machines captured his face and the white Hyundai Elantra with no front license plate. He planned for the data. He forgot about the physical world.
And that's what I don't understand. I don't understand why he thought withdrawing cash. That's one of the huge questions in this case. Why did he think not using his debit or credit cards in the days leading up to the homicides and then after only using cash? How on earth does that help you when you're still having to withdraw the money out of the ATM? You're still being captured on camera. You're still having a record of those transactions. What do you make of that?
Just another mistake added onto his list of mistakes that he's made, where he thought he was going to be smarter than the investigators because he knew all this background information about criminal justice and policing and crime scenes and all the other things that go along with it.
Prosecutors also had records from Target, Under Armour, Walmart, a grocery store a mile from King Road, Venmo, a credit union, and Crypto.com. The digital net was tightening because the modern investigator does not need a smoking gun when the suspect voluntarily builds his own digital crime scene brick by brick across 8 months. The premeditation was not a flash of rage. It was a calendar. It was March through November. It was gift cards and shipping confirmations and cash withdrawals scheduled like an appointment with death.
And Kohberger, back in August of 2022, opened a new bank account, depositing $2,000. Prosecutors say he only started withdrawing cash from that account on the morning of the murders and only used cash to make purchases starting on November 10th.
And yet, after all of this, after the guilty plea, and after the life sentence, Bryan Kohberger now sits in Idaho's maximum security institution, claiming the plea was a broken promise, that his lawyers coerced him, and that exculpatory evidence was hidden. He wants a trial. The irony is so sharp it could cut. He spent 8 months planning the perfect crime and 7 days trying to delete the evidence. Now, he wants a courtroom, a jury, and a second chance to explain away an Amazon cart that reads like a confession. The state was ready to introduce 49 devices into evidence with zero digital connection between Kohberger and the 4 victims. That remains the haunting mystery. No texts, no messages, no social media links, just a house on King Road, a K-bar knife, and a man who drove there in the dark.
Insane. It's just absolutely crazy to me. I mean, the amount of premeditation and planning that went into this, it wasn't just a couple of weeks. It was months and months, and it appears to be about 8 months, maybe even longer, that he was planning this.
And the fact that this looks totally random to me is even more odd or odder because, like I said, not having, well, I think it was 49 devices according to that document, 49 different things that they've checked with zero connection between him and these 4 victims, to me is just like a real like wow moment, saying like this looks totally random that he just found this house and decided this was it. I find that hard to believe, you know, in certain aspects. Like how.
If you want more deep dives into the evidence the mainstream misses, like this video, share it, subscribe to the VerdictOrigin, and turn on notifications. We'll be back.